AITA for refusing to let my sister move in after she blew up my wedding and is now homeless. So, to start off, I, 29F, got married about 6 months ago to my husband, Ryan, 31M. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, but thanks to my older sister, Emily, 33F, it turned into an absolute nightmare that still gives me anxiety every time someone mentions weddings or family gatherings. Emily has always been the kind of person who needed to be the center of attention. Growing up, she was the golden child in my parents' eyes. She was the pretty one, the popular one, the one who always knew what she wanted. Meanwhile, I was the quiet kid who stayed in my room and studied. When we got older, the dynamic didn't change much. Every major milestone in my life somehow turned into a moment for Emily to shine. When I got engaged, my parents were thrilled, and Emily acted like it was her engagement too. She started talking about how she knew all about weddings because she helped plan her best friends and how I should let her take some of the stress off my hands. At first, I genuinely appreciated her help. I'm not the most organized person, and she had a knack for logistics. But soon, it started to feel like my wedding was becoming Emily's project. She questioned every decision I made. I'd show her a dress, and she'd wrinkle her nose. I'd pick flowers, and she'd say, "That's not really your vibe." When I chose my maid of honor, my best friend of 15 years, Sarah, Emily lost it. She said she assumed she'd be maid of honor since she was my sister. I tried to explain that I wanted her as a bridesmaid, but that didn't go over well. She got cold and distant for weeks, only to suddenly forgive me 2 months before the wedding. Fast forward to the wedding day. Everything was finally coming together. I was nervous but happy until Emily showed up late, wearing a dress that was almost identical to my wedding gown. It wasn't white, but it was a pale champagne color with lace and beading that made it look way too similar. My bridesmaids were furious. I asked her privately if she could at least put on a shawl or something to tone it down, and she rolled her eyes and said, "Don't be insecure. It's your day. People will know you're the bride." I let it go because I didn't want drama. But apparently, Emily wasn't done. During the reception, after a few glasses of wine, she decided it would be funny to give an impromptu speech. We hadn't planned for open speeches. We had a few close family members and friends speak, and that was it. Emily took the mic anyway, swaying slightly, and started off by saying, "I've always known my sister to make interesting choices." Everyone kind of chuckled awkwardly, thinking it was a joke. Then she went on a 5-minute rant about how Ryan wasn't really her type, and how she couldn't believe he actually proposed. She told this funny story about how I used to cry over guys in high school, and said she never thought I'd actually settle down. She ended with, "Well, I hope this one lasts longer than her plants, at least." Everyone was dead silent. I want to sink into the floor. My mom tried to play it off by laughing nervously, but I could feel every pair of eyes on me. I went outside and cried. Ryan followed me and said he wanted to kick her out, but I begged him not to cause a scene. We just tried to enjoy the rest of the night and pretend it hadn't happened. Still, the damage was done. A few guests even left early because of how uncomfortable things got. After the wedding, Emily texted me like nothing happened. When I didn't respond, she said I was being overly sensitive and that she was just joking. I finally snapped and told her she ruined one of the most important days of my life. She told me to get over it and then blocked me on social media for a few months. Now, here's where it gets messy again. About 2 weeks ago, I got a call from my mom saying Emily had broken up with her boyfriend and lost her apartment. Apparently, she was living with him and had nowhere else to go. My parents live in a retirement community that doesn't allow long-term guests, so they couldn't take her in. My mom asked if Emily could stay with me and Ryan for a few months until she gets back on her feet. I immediately said no. I told her that after what Emily did at the wedding, I didn't feel comfortable having her in my home. My mom said I was being cruel and that family should help family. I told her I wasn't obligated to help someone who publicly humiliated me and then never sincerely apologized. That night, Emily called me herself, crying, saying she had nowhere to go and that I was her last resort. She said she was sorry if she hurt me and that she didn't mean it like that. The apology felt hollow, like she was just saying what she thought I wanted to hear. I told her I hoped she found a place soon, but that I couldn't live with her. She got angry and told me I was vindictive and punishing her for a mistake she made while drunk. Now my whole family is split. My parents think I'm being heartless. My brother says Emily had it coming and that she needs to face the consequences of her behavior. Even some of my friends are divided. A couple of them think I should just let her crash on my couch for a few weeks, while others think I'd be crazy to let her into my space after what she did. Part of me feels guilty because she is my sister and I don't want her to end up homeless. But another part of me can't shake the image of her smirking during that speech while everyone stared at me like I was a joke. I don't trust her not to make my life miserable again. Ryan is firmly against letting her move in. He said he's trying to be polite about it, but that he doesn't want someone who actively disrespects me living under our roof. He reminded me that the last time she visited, she made comments about how nice our house was and how she deserved a place like this. My mom called me again last night and said Emily is staying in a motel but can't afford to keep doing that much longer. She said I'm choosing pride over compassion. I told her that maybe Emily should have thought about compassion before tearing me down in front of 100 people. Now I'm torn. I know what she did was awful, but I also feel this deep sibling guilt that I can't seem to shake. Am I really the bad guy for refusing to help her now, even though she's in a bad spot? AITA? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter move back in after she humiliated me at my own wedding. I, 41F, marry my husband, Dan, 45M, last year after being together for 5 years. It was a second marriage for both of us. Dan has a daughter, Lily, 20F, from his first marriage, and I have a son, Mason, 17M, from mine. When Dan and I first got together, Lily was 14 and struggling with her parents' divorce. I did my best to be patient with her, to not overstep, to support her relationship with her mom. I knew she saw me as Dad's girlfriend, not family, and I was okay with that. Over the years, things stayed civil, but never affectionate. Lily was polite when she had to be, but often distant, especially when her mother would make snide comments about me. Dan and I both tried family therapy, but Lily would barely engage. I figured that, over time, we'd find our rhythm. Before our wedding, Dan and I sat both kids down to talk about the ceremony and our expectations. Mason was thrilled. He liked Dan and was happy our families were becoming official. Lily, however, was cold. She said she didn't want to be in the wedding party, which we respected. I even told her she could wear whatever she felt comfortable in, no pressure to match colors or themes. I wanted her there as a guest, not an obligation. The wedding itself was small, about 60 people, mostly family and close friends. It was supposed to be a happy day, but during the reception, right after the speeches, Lily stood up and asked for the microphone. I assumed she wanted to give a toast, which touched me. But instead, she gave a speech that still makes me sick to think about. She started by saying that she wanted to set the record straight, and that while she hoped her dad was happy, she didn't want anyone to forget that this woman, meaning me, was the reason her parents' marriage fell apart. She claimed I had been seeing Dan while he was still with her mom, that I inserted myself into their family, and that I had played the victim while breaking up a home. None of it was true. Dan and I met after his marriage was over. His ex had already moved out, and he had paperwork in process. But in that moment, with everyone staring and whispering, I couldn't say a word. Dan immediately took the mic from her and told her to leave. She stormed out crying, followed by her cousins. Half the room was stunned into silence, and the rest didn't know what to do. The rest of the night was a blur. Afterward, Dan was furious. He said his daughter had embarrassed both of us and that he was done trying to cater to her resentment. He didn't speak to her for months. I told him not to cut her off completely, but I couldn't bring myself to forgive her either. Mason was livid. He said Lily had ruined our wedding and didn't deserve to come back from that. Months passed. Dan eventually reached out to Lily around Christmas. She refused to apologize to me directly, but told him she regretted the timing. Dan said that was the best he was going to get, and I didn't argue. We didn't see her for the holidays. She stayed with her mom. I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward to last month. Lily called Dan saying her roommate in college had moved out unexpectedly and she couldn't afford rent. She asked if she could move back home for a while. Dan, being the soft-hearted dad he is, immediately said yes. I was blindsided when he told me that night. I said, "We didn't even ask me." He looked guilty and said he figured we could all be adults and move forward. I told him I wasn't comfortable living with someone who had publicly humiliated me, someone who had made me feel like a homewrecker in front of my entire family. I said that unless Lily apologized sincerely and acknowledged what she did, I couldn't live under the same roof with her. Dan said I was holding a grudge and that family should come before pride. I said it wasn't pride, it was self-respect. I've never been cruel to his daughter. I've bent over backwards to make her comfortable, and she repaid me by trying to destroy my reputation in front of everyone I love. Lily found out I said no and sent me a long text saying I was selfish and trying to keep her away from her dad. She also said that she was just telling the truth and that I should own what I did. I showed Dan the text, and to his credit, he looked hurt but said, "She's just angry." I asked him point blank if he believed her accusation. He said no, but that she's confused and needs time. I told him she can have all the time she wants, just not in my house. That's when things really blew up. Dan said he would pay for her to stay somewhere else temporarily, but that it wasn't fair that his daughter couldn't come home. Mason overheard the argument and jumped in, saying she doesn't deserve to live here after what she did. That turned it into a family war. Now, Dan is staying with his brother for a few days to cool off. He said he feels torn between his wife and his child, and that I'm making him choose. I told him I wasn't making him choose. His daughter's behavior did that. Part of me feels like maybe I am being harsh. She's young, and clearly, she's heard about her parents' divorce. Maybe she was manipulated by her mom into believing things that weren't true. But every time I picture her standing in front of that microphone, smirking as she called me out in front of everyone I love, I can't imagine ever feeling safe with her in my home again. My sister says I should be the bigger person and let her move in on the condition of basic civility. My best friend says I'd be insane to let someone like that under my roof again. Dan says he understands why I'm angry, but that she's still his kid. I'm stuck between not wanting to destroy my marriage and not wanting to feel disrespected in my own home. It's been over a year, and Lily still hasn't shown a shred of remorse. So now I'm sitting here wondering, am I the asshole for refusing to let my stepdaughter move back in, even if it means my marriage might not survive it? AITA for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she replaced me as her maid of honor with my ex-best friend? So for context, my sister Claire, 28F, and I, 26F, have always had a complicated relationship. We're only 2 years apart, and while we love each other, we've always been compared by family, teachers, even friends. Claire is the golden child, stunning, sociable, and effortlessly put together. I was the quiet, bookish one who got decent grades, but never stood out the way she did. Despite that, I've always tried to be a supportive sister. When Claire got engaged last year to her fiancé, Matt, 31M, she immediately asked me to be her maid of honor. I was genuinely touched. I even cried when she asked because it felt like after all the years of comparison, she finally saw me as someone she truly wanted by her side. I threw myself into planning everything: bridal shower themes, Pinterest boards for color schemes, the bachelorette trip. I saved money to help with decorations and spent countless evenings on the phone with vendors because Claire works full-time and said she trusted my taste. Everything was going well until about 4 months ago when Claire reconnected with her college friend Tessa. Tessa and I used to be very close. We were inseparable for most of college. But near the end of our senior year, she started dating the guy I was seeing behind my back. When I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Instead, she said I was too sensitive and that love finds a way. I cut her off completely after that. I haven't spoken to her in nearly 5 years. When Claire told me she had run into Tessa at a work event, I was polite but uncomfortable. I didn't want to bring up old drama, especially during wedding prep. But slowly, Tessa started popping up everywhere. Claire started inviting her to brunches, fittings, and even the group chat meant for the bridesmaids. Every time I saw her name, my stomach dropped. Then about 2 months ago, Claire called me and said she had a small change to the wedding party. She told me she wanted Tessa to be her maid of honor alongside me. She said she didn't want to choose between her best friends. I told her I wasn't okay with that. Not only did Tessa betray me, but Claire knew exactly how much that situation hurt me. Claire said I needed to let go of the past, and that this was about her, not me. I tried to be mature. I agreed to stay as co-maid of honor, but the dynamic was awful. Tessa would constantly undermine me. "Oh, that decoration idea seems kind of cheap," or "I already told Claire about this. Maybe you didn't get the memo." She even went as far as to fix my speech draft by removing personal memories between me and Claire and replacing them with anecdotes about their college days. I finally hit my breaking point at the bachelorette party. I had planned it months in advance at a cute cabin resort. Organized games, made custom gift bags, the whole thing. Tessa showed up late and immediately started taking over. She told everyone she had a better playlist, swapped my decorations for some pink and gold theme she brought herself, and then told the group to toast to the bride and her real best friend. Everyone laughed awkwardly. I went outside and cried. When I got back, Tessa was telling a story about how she and Claire used to pick on me in high school for being so uptight. I walked out. I told Claire later that night that I couldn't do this anymore, that she'd let Tessa humiliate me. Claire said I was making everything about myself and that I was jealous of their friendship. A week later, she sent me a text saying she was making Tessa the soulmate of honor because she needs someone who can handle the pressure without drama. I told her fine, do whatever she wants. I didn't even argue. But then, a few days ago, she sent out a message to our family group chat saying she hopes everyone supports her special day and that she wishes people would put aside their grudges for love. It felt like a jab at me, so I told her I wasn't coming. I said I love her, but I refuse to stand in a room celebrating someone who disrespects me while my sister enables it. My parents were furious. My mom said I was selfish for letting an old college fight ruin Claire's big day. My dad told me to be the bigger person. Claire texted me saying I'd broken her heart and that family should come before pride. Now I'm getting messages from relatives saying I'm cruel for not attending. My cousin even called me dramatic and said, "It's just a wedding, not a moral battle." Maybe it is just a wedding, but I spent a year of my life planning it, supporting her, and she tossed me aside for someone who literally betrayed me. What makes it worse is that some friends have taken Claire's side. A mutual friend told me Claire has been telling people I was unstable and blew up over nothing. She apparently said she tried to keep the peace, and I refused to move on. I haven't responded to any of it. I am honestly exhausted. Still, sometimes I wonder if I'm being petty. Maybe I should have just sucked it up for one day. But another part of me feels like attending would have been me, saying it's okay to treat me like a placeholder until something better comes along. Last night, my mom called again and said Claire cried when she realized I really wasn't coming. She begged me to reconsider, said, "You'll regret it when she's gone someday." That hit me hard. But then I thought about the way Claire let Tessa tear me down again and again, and how she dismissed my feelings every single time. I don't hate Claire. I really don't. But I also don't want to show up smiling for photos next to someone who wrecked one of the most painful parts of my past, just because it's convenient for everyone else. So, Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to go to my sister's wedding after she replaced me with my ex-best friend? AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move into my house even though I have more space? I, 33F, bought my first house 2 years ago after working my butt off through my 20s. It's a modest 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. I'm single, no kids, and while I do make decent money now, it took years of student loans, side jobs, and ramen dinners to get here. My house is my pride and joy. I spent months fixing it up myself, painting, landscaping, everything. My older sister, Melissa, 38F, has 3 kids, 10M, 8F, and 4M. She and her husband, Dan, 40M, have always struggled financially. Some of that is bad luck, but if I'm being honest, a lot of it is poor choices. Dan quits jobs often because he can't deal with bosses, and Melissa constantly spends money on things they don't need. They've always lived in rental places and are perpetually behind on rent or utilities. About 2 months ago, Melissa called me in tears, saying they were being evicted. Their landlord was selling the property, and they had nowhere to go. She asked if they could stay with me for a few weeks until they figured something out. I hesitated, but she said it would only be temporary, and I felt guilty saying no. They're my family, and the kids didn't deserve to be homeless. So I agreed. The first week was fine. I gave them the guest room and set up a bunk bed for the kids in the spare room. But soon enough, the few weeks started turning into indefinite. They weren't actively looking for new housing, and I noticed Dan wasn't even working. He'd taken a break to clear his head. Meanwhile, Melissa would go out shopping or scroll on her phone while I came home from work to find my kitchen a mess, toys everywhere, and her kids eating snacks straight out of the pantry. After a month, my grocery bill had basically doubled, my electricity was through the roof, and I was never alone in my own house. I finally told Melissa we needed to discuss how long they were planning to stay and how they could contribute to expenses. She got defensive immediately, saying I was making them feel unwelcome and that they just needed stability for the kids. I offered to help her find low-income housing programs or short-term rentals, but she refused, saying she didn't want to raise her kids in some run-down apartment. Then last month, things hit a breaking point. I came home one day to find Dan had set up his computer and gaming chair in my living room. He said he was getting into streaming to make money. He'd moved my coffee table to the garage without asking and drilled holes into the wall to mount his lights. I lost it. I told them this wasn't acceptable and that they needed to start planning to move out by the end of the month. Melissa cried again, accusing me of kicking my family out onto the street. Dan said I was elitist and had forgotten where I came from. That night, I got a long message from my mom, basically guilt-tripping me, saying Melissa has it so much harder than me, and that I should help until they get back on their feet. She even suggested that since I have 3 bedrooms and only use one, maybe I could downsize to an apartment and rent my house to them since they have a family to care for. That was the last straw. I told my mom that was absolutely not happening and that I wasn't sacrificing my home for people who refuse to take responsibility for their lives. I gave Melissa a firm deadline, 2 more weeks, and even offered to pay their first month's rent somewhere else. She ignored me completely. Dan kept gaming, the kids kept tearing up my living room, and I started dreading coming home from work. When the deadline came and went, I finally told them they had to leave by the weekend. Melissa called me heartless, saying I was traumatizing her kids and that family doesn't turn their back when things get hard. I said I had done more than enough and that this wasn't sustainable. Dan yelled at me, saying I was kicking out children for my own comfort. I told them if they weren't gone by Sunday, I'd have to involve the police to remove them as unauthorized occupants. They left that Sunday, but not quietly. They slammed doors, yelled, and Melissa said she hoped I'd never know what it's like to be a mother because I'd be a terrible one. I haven't heard from her since, but my mom and some other relatives keep saying I should have been more patient and that family should help each other no matter what. I know what they're going through is hard. I know it's awful to have kids and no stable home. But I feel like I gave them months of help, free housing, food, utilities, and endless patience, and they just took advantage. Now I'm left cleaning up holes in the wall, stains on my carpet, and a pile of resentment that I don't know how to shake. I keep second-guessing myself because the guilt is eating at me. Part of me wonders if I should have just let them stay longer or if I'm being too cold. But then I remember Dan telling me, at least the kids have space now, when he first set up his gaming rig, as if my house was theirs by default. My mom says, you'll understand when you have a family of your own, but I can't help feeling that family shouldn't mean being a doormat. I work too hard for my stability to hand it over to people who don't respect it. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move back in, even though I have more space and they're struggling, because I'm tired of being taken advantage of. AITA for refusing to take care of my sister's baby after she said I was lucky to be child-free. I, 31F, have an older sister, Lila, 34F, who just had her first baby 4 months ago. She and her husband, Evan, 36M, are exhausted new parents. I get it. I really do. but I also feel like I've become their free childcare provider without consent. A little background. I'm child-free by choice. I've known since I was a teenager that I didn't want kids. I'm not anti-child. I just never wanted to be a parent. I've been open about this with my family forever. Lila always said she respected my decision, but when she got pregnant, that dynamic started to shift. It started small, asking if I could come over and keep her company when she was on maternity leave. I didn't mind at first. I brought groceries, helped tidy up, cooked a few meals. But after the baby came, those visits turned into "can you just hold him for a sec?" which became "can you watch him while I nap?" which morphed into "can you babysit for a few hours so I can run errands?" I love my nephew, but it's not my responsibility to raise him. I have a demanding job in marketing, often working 9 to 10-hour days, and when I'm off, I just want peace and quiet. Last month, things came to a head. Lila called me crying because Evan's mom was sick and he had to fly out to see her. She asked if I could move in for a few days to help her manage. I agreed, thinking it would be maybe 3 nights. It turned into 9. 9 days of 2 a.m. feedings, diaper changes, and a screaming infant while she caught up on sleep. When I finally went home, I was absolutely drained. I told her I loved her, but couldn't keep doing this. She said she understood, or so I thought. 2 weeks later, she asked again if I could babysit for a couple of hours. I said no because I had a deadline and had already told her I couldn't. She sighed and said, "Must be nice to be so selfish and child-free, huh? You don't get it. You have no idea what real responsibility feels like." That hit a nerve. I told her she had chosen to have a child, and I had chosen not to. That didn't make me selfish. She snapped that family helps family, and I was turning my back on her when she needed me most. I told her flat out, "I'm not your nanny. I helped you more than I should have, and instead of being grateful, you're acting like I owe you my time." I don't. Then I hung up. Cue the drama. My mom called later that night, saying Lila was devastated and felt abandoned. Mom said I should be more compassionate because motherhood is hard, and that if I were a good sister, I'd want to help. I reminded her that I had already spent over a week helping and that I wasn't a parent, nor had I agreed to become a backup one. Mom sighed and said I'd understand someday, which was rich considering she knows I'm not having kids. Evan texted me a few days later apologizing for Lila's words, but said she was just overwhelmed and that maybe I could help occasionally to ease her stress. I told him I'd think about it, but honestly, I'm still furious. The final straw came last weekend. I was out at brunch with friends when I got a text from Lila. "Emergency. Need you now." I panicked, thinking something had happened to the baby, so I rushed over, only to find her in pajamas, scrolling her phone while the baby was in a bouncer. She said she just needed a break because she hadn't showered in 2 days and thought if she said it was an emergency, I'd actually show up. I lost it. I told her I wasn't her maid or co-parent, and lying to me was manipulative and cruel. She started crying, saying she was just desperate. I told her I understood she was tired, but tricking me wasn't okay, and if she pulled something like that again, I'd block her number. That night, my mom and Lila both sent me long messages saying I was cold-hearted and had no empathy. My dad, who's usually quiet about family drama, actually sided with me, saying that while it's okay to help sometimes, Lila needed to figure out her own rhythm. Now, the family group chat is basically divided. My mom and aunt are on Lila's side, saying I owe it to family to help when needed. My dad, cousin, and a few others say Lila's taking advantage of me. I'll admit, I haven't been over to see my nephew since the emergency incident 3 weeks ago. Lila's texted a few times asking when I'm coming to see him, but honestly, I don't want to. Every interaction feels like a guilt trip waiting to happen. Part of me feels guilty, though. I know postpartum life can be brutal. Lila's always been a bit high-strung, and I know she's struggling. But another part of me feels like she's crossing major boundaries and using motherhood as a way to manipulate me into unpaid labor. Evan's mom apparently told Lila to get professional help or a babysitter instead of leaning on me, which caused another family argument. Lila's now saying everyone's ganging up on her and that she's never asking for help again. Mom's blaming me for making her feel isolated. I don't want to be cruel. I really don't. But every time I bend, Lila pushes further. And I can't shake the feeling that she resents me for being child-free. Like she wants me to pay for my choice by taking on her burden. I've been thinking about sending a message to the family group chat saying I won't be engaging in childcare anymore, and that if Lila needs help, she should hire a sitter or look into support groups for new moms. But I know it'll explode into drama again, and part of me wonders if I'm being too harsh or cold. So, AITA for refusing to take care of my sister's baby after she said I was lucky to be child-free. AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding after he insulted my family. I, 29F, am getting married in 6 months. My fiancé, Mark, 31M, and I have been together for 4 years, and we've been planning the wedding for almost a year. My family is really close-knit, and I've always considered my sister, Rachel, 26F, my best friend, even though we fight occasionally like any siblings do. Rachel has been dating someone new for about 3 months. His name is Dylan. From the beginning, I wasn't thrilled about him. Not because of anything major, just some vibes that didn't sit right with me. He can be a bit condescending at times, and I've noticed he tends to joke at others' expense in a way that comes across as mean rather than funny. I told myself I keep an open mind because I didn't want to judge too quickly. 2 months ago, Mark and I hosted a small family dinner at my parents' house. Dylan was invited. Right off the bat, he seemed impatient and uninterested in making conversation. At one point, we were talking about our family traditions, and he interrupted my mom mid-sentence with a sarcastic comment about how over-the-top we are. I tried to brush it off, but then he went further, saying things like my dad's job was boring and my younger brother was the most annoying kid he had ever met. He didn't say it quietly either. He said it in a way that made the entire table uncomfortable. My mom was obviously hurt, and my dad gave him a very forced smile. Mark tried to defuse it, and I ended up telling Dylan pretty sternly that we don't speak to my family that way. He just laughed it off and said he was just joking, and that my family needed to lighten up. I was beyond frustrated, and Rachel just sat there looking awkward, but didn't defend me or my family. I asked her later why she didn't say anything, and she just shrugged, saying, "I didn't think it was that big of a deal. He's just teasing." I spent the rest of the night quietly fuming, trying not to start a bigger argument, but I couldn't get over how disrespectful he was. After the dinner, I told Mark I didn't want Dylan at the wedding. I tried to explain that it wasn't personal against Rachel, but the way Dylan treated my family was completely unacceptable, and I didn't want him there to ruin what should be one of the happiest days of my life. Rachel reacted poorly when I told her. She immediately got defensive and said I was being controlling and unfair because it's her relationship and she should get to decide who she brings. I told her that while she absolutely can bring a date, Dylan's behavior crossed a line that I wasn't willing to overlook, and I had the right to set boundaries for my wedding. She then accused me of picking favorites and trying to control her life. Since that conversation, things have gotten tense. Rachel has been giving me the silent treatment, and our parents are stuck in the middle. They understand why I'm upset, but they also feel bad because Rachel is clearly hurt. Mark has been supportive, saying that it's my wedding and I'm allowed to set the guest list, but he's worried that the tension will spill over into the wedding day. Here's where it gets messy, eh? Rachel sent me a long text yesterday, saying that if Dylan isn't allowed at the wedding, she won't come at all. She accused me of choosing my fiancé over my family, and said that she can't respect me anymore if I treat her like a child. My parents are begging both of us to compromise, but I honestly don't see a compromise here. I can't in good conscience invite someone who insulted my family and think it will be fine on my wedding day. I even considered letting him come, but asking him to apologize in front of everyone first. But he refuses to apologize, saying again that he was just joking. Mark suggested we have a mediated conversation with Rachel, but I don't think she'll change her mind. I feel like I'm being reasonable by standing up for my family and protecting the atmosphere of my wedding. At the same time, I can't help but feel guilty because I love my sister, and it hurts that this is causing a rift between us. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her boyfriend to my wedding because of how he treated my family. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in with me after she lost her house, even though I have a big empty one. So for context, I, 35F, Bought my house 4 years ago after saving like a maniac for almost a decade. It's a 4-bedroom home in a quiet area outside of town. I live alone, no pets, no partner, no kids. When I bought it, people, including my family, told me I was overbuying, that a single woman doesn't need that much space. But I grew up in a cramped household where privacy didn't exist, and I promised myself that one day I'd have a place where I could close a door and breathe. So I did. It's my sanctuary. My older sister, Laura, 39F, has always been chaotic. She has 3 kids, 12M, 9F, and 6M, and has gone through a string of boyfriends, jobs, and rental homes. My parents have bailed her out financially multiple times. I've helped too, but on a smaller scale, babysitting, paying for school supplies, stuff like that. I love my niece and nephews, but Laura's lifestyle exhausts me. This summer, Laura's boyfriend kicked her out after she found out he was cheating, and because the house was in his name, she had to leave. My parents live in a small retirement condo, so she asked if she and the kids could stay with me just for a few months until she found a new place. I hesitated, but told her I'd think about it. That same night, I walked through my house, imagining it filled with constant noise, toys, tantrums, and Laura's loud phone arguments with whoever she was dating next. My stomach actually twisted. My home is my peace. I couldn't handle it being turned into another one of Laura's dramas. So I told her no. I explained gently that I love them, but I value my space and can't have 4 extra people living here indefinitely. I offered to help her find a short-term rental, even to cover a deposit and first month's rent. She was quiet, then said, "You'd rather let your own family sleep in their car than open up one of your 4 empty bedrooms?" That hit hard. I told her that wasn't true. I just needed boundaries. She hung up on me. The next day, my mom called furious. She said Laura and the kids were staying in a motel for now and could run out of money soon. I repeated that I'd pay for a rental, but Mom said I was hiding behind money instead of compassion. She told me I was lucky to have no responsibilities and that family should come first. Then my dad called later, trying to play peacemaker, but still implying I was being cold. A few days later, I got a text from my niece, the 9-year-old, saying she missed me and wished she could live with me because Mom cries every night. That one broke me. I almost gave in right there, but then Laura texted right after, saying, "I hope you're happy. Your niece is crying because of you." That made me furious. It felt manipulative, so I didn't respond. Instead, I sent her links to 2 available rentals nearby that take kids and pets. She has a small dog, and said I'd cover the first month if she applied. She replied, "Forget it. I'll figure it out without your blood money." Since then, my parents and even a few cousins have been giving me the cold shoulder. My dad tried to talk to me last week and said that no one needs 4 bedrooms for themselves, and that maybe this is karma for being selfish. My best friend says I'm not wrong, but she admits that it sounds bad when I say I refuse to take in my sister and her kids. I know it does. I know I sound like a heartless person sitting in a big empty house while my family struggles. But every time I picture them here, I get this sense of dread. I'd lose my peace, my space, my sanity. I've worked too hard to build a life I have now. Still, I can't shake the guilt. I've always been the responsible one in the family, the one everyone calls when things fall apart. This time, I just couldn't do it. And now everyone's acting like I've done something unforgivable. My mom even said, "One day you'll know what it's like to need someone, and I hope they don't shut the door on you." I keep asking myself if I'm really that selfish. Maybe I could have handled a couple of months, even if it was uncomfortable. But a few months with Laura always turns into a year. She's done this with friends before, stayed temporarily, and then refused to leave until they practically had to kick her out. I can't go through that. Last week, I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some things for them, and my mom barely spoke to me. My dad just sighed and said, "Your sister's finally found another place, but remember who helped her. Her friends, not you." I said I was glad she was safe, but he just muttered, "You'll regret being alone one day." That stung more than I expected. I'm not trying to be alone. I just wanted boundaries. Now things are awkward with my whole family. My brother, 33M, who lives out of state, texted me that I probably did the right thing, but that I should have handled it more tactfully. I don't even know what that means. What was I supposed to do? Invite them in, destroy my peace, and resent them every day? That doesn't feel like love either. What makes it harder is that I actually do miss my niece and nephews. I've always been the cool aunt. I used to take them to the park or have sleepovers at my place. But now Laura refuses to let them talk to me, saying I chose my house over them. She posted something vague on Facebook about fake family who abandon you when you're down, and I know everyone knows it's about me. Even old friends from high school who barely talk to me anymore have started commenting things like, SMH, some people forget where they came from. I hate drama, and yet here I am, in the middle of a family storm just because I said no once. I've helped for years. I've given money, time, and emotional energy. I just wanted to draw a line, but apparently that makes me the villain. Sometimes I look around my quiet house and wonder if maybe they're right. Maybe I'm selfish for guarding my peace so fiercely. But then I imagine waking up every morning to screaming kids, sticky counters, chaos everywhere, and my sister's endless stream of excuses for why she still hasn't found a new place. I know how that would end. Me angry, them resentful, and another family blow up down the line. I chose to prevent that, but I can't tell if I chose wrong. So Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my sister and her kids move in with me when they lost their home, even though I have space. AITA for refusing to give up my late father's house to my half-sister, even though she's pregnant and homeless. So this whole thing exploded last month, and now my entire extended family thinks I'm some kind of monster. For context, I'm 29F, and my half-sister, Sophie, is 24F. We share the same dad, but different moms. My mom and dad were married for 20 years before he had an affair with Sophie's mom, which ended their marriage. My mom was devastated, and I stayed with her while my dad moved in with Sophie's mom and later had Sophie. Dad tried to stay in my life, but things were awkward. When I was about 18, Sophie was 13, and her mom passed away suddenly. My dad asked if I wanted to move in and be part of the family again. I declined. I visited sometimes, but I never got close to Sophie. She was always polite but distant, and I didn't blame her. The whole situation was complicated. Dad passed away 3 years ago from cancer. He left behind his house, which has been in our family for generations. It's a beautiful old home in a small town, and it was fully paid off. When the will was read, I found out he had left it entirely to me. Sophie was left a modest savings account, around $30,000, and some of his personal belongings. I was honestly shocked because I expected him to split things evenly. I even asked the lawyer if there had been a mistake, but apparently, Dad had made that decision intentionally. In his letter to me, he wrote that he wanted me to have something stable after years of tension and that he hoped Sophie would find her own way. It felt awkward, but I followed his wishes. I moved into the house, renovated parts of it, and it's been my home ever since. Fast forward to this year, Sophie got pregnant. The father is apparently out of the picture, and she recently lost her job. A few weeks ago, she called me out of the blue, crying, saying she was being evicted from her apartment and had nowhere to go. She asked if she could move into Dad's house temporarily. I hesitated because, well, it's not Dad's house anymore, it's mine. But I also didn't want to see her on the streets, especially while pregnant. I told her she could come stay for a couple of weeks while she sorted things out. When she arrived, she had a ton of stuff, including furniture and boxes like she was moving in permanently. The first week went fine, but then she started acting like she owned the place. She rearranged furniture, brought in her own decor, told me she wanted to turn my office into a nursery, and kept referring to the house as Dad's home or our home. I reminded her that I had only agreed to let her stay temporarily, and she brushed it off, saying she needed stability for the baby. After about 3 weeks, I told her we needed to talk about her next steps. She got defensive and said she assumed she'd be staying until after the baby was born. I told her I couldn't commit to that and that she should start looking for other arrangements or social programs that could help her. She exploded. She accused me of being heartless and said that as her only family left, I was abandoning her in her time of need. I said I was helping by giving her a place for now, but that this house was mine. She started crying, saying Dad would have wanted her to live there since it was his legacy. I told her that Dad made his decision. He left it to me, not her. Things got worse after that. She started giving me the silent treatment, slamming doors, and making passive-aggressive comments like, "Must be nice not to worry about rent while I carry your father's grandchild." The final straw came when I came home from work and found she'd moved my things out of the master bedroom and set up her stuff there. She said she needed the bigger room for her and the baby. I lost it. I told her she had crossed every boundary imaginable, and I wanted her out by the end of the week. She screamed that I was kicking a pregnant woman out onto the street and that she'd never forgive me. I stood firm. She left 2 days later, staying with a friend, and now my phone hasn't stopped ringing. My aunt, a couple of cousins, even my mom, who hated my dad for the affair, said I should be the bigger person and honor his memory by letting Sophie stay until she gets on her feet. They said I don't understand what it's like to be young, alone, and pregnant. I do feel awful, but I also feel completely disrespected. I let her in, and she treated my home like it was hers. She's an adult. She could have used that $30,000 from the inheritance more wisely. I found out from one of her friends that she spent most of it on a failed business idea last year. Now everyone says I'm heartless and selfish, and some are even hinting they won't speak to me unless I make things right. I've started second-guessing myself because, yes, she's pregnant and struggling, but I can't shake the feeling that letting her stay would have meant giving up my boundaries completely. To make things worse, I recently got a message from Sophie saying she's naming her baby after Dad and that she hopes he's proud of her, even if I'm not. It broke me a little. I loved my dad, complicated as things were, but I don't think he would have wanted his final gift to turn into this. Part of me wonders if I should have just let her have the house from the start. I could afford to rent somewhere else, and maybe it would have made everyone's lives easier. But then again, would that just have rewarded her entitlement? I keep replaying the argument in my head, her yelling that I was taking everything from her. But it's not like I took anything. Dad made that decision. I didn't ask for it. So now I'm sitting in this house that doesn't feel as peaceful anymore, wondering if I'm really the villain here. AITA for refusing to let my half-sister live in our late father's house and ultimately kicking her out when she overstepped. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. I, 29F, have a sister, Ella, 26F, who is getting married next year. We've always had a complicated relationship, and lately, things have been tense between us because she's asked me to be a bridesmaid in her wedding. To give you some context, our relationship growing up was, to put it bluntly, extremely toxic. Ella was always the golden child in our family. Our parents, especially our mom, were obsessed with her and constantly made it clear that she was the better child. I was always in her shadow, and it didn't help that I was quiet and kept to myself while Ella was outgoing, social, and the center of attention. Growing up, I never had much of a chance to shine. If I ever did something I was proud of, it was always overshadowed by something she did. I was the weird kid, the one who never really fit in. Ella, on the other hand, was the perfect daughter, always getting straight A's, winning awards, and being the life of every party. I'll admit, I was resentful of how our parents treated her. They never really supported me or my interests, but they always made sure Ella had the best of everything. She got brand new clothes for every season, while I wore hand-me-downs. She got all the praise, while I was left to fend for myself. As a result, I started distancing myself from the family. I would stay in my room a lot, read, and do my own thing. I didn't feel like I belonged with them. The turning point came when I was in high school, and I was applying for colleges. I had worked hard, studied late nights, and put everything I had into my applications. My parents, however, didn't seem to care. They were too busy planning Ella's Sweet 16 party, which they spent thousands on. The party was a huge deal, something that my parents had been planning for months, and they completely ignored the fact that I was applying to college and had been accepted to a few. When I told them I got into a good university, my mom barely reacted. All she said was, "That's nice, honey. Anyway, have you seen Ella's new dress for the party?" That moment stuck with me. I realized that I would never get the validation I was seeking from my parents, and I started resenting them more. But the real problem wasn't just with him. It was with Ella, too. She never really supported me in any of my accomplishments, and in fact, she often undermined me. She'd call me a try-hard or make snarky comments whenever I mentioned something I was proud of. She'd always get the spotlight, even if it meant pushing me aside. There were times when I would show her something I was working on or share something exciting, and she'd just shut me down or make it all about her. After I went off to college, I tried to distance myself from Ella and my parents. I focused on my studies and slowly started to build a life that was my own. I came back home for the holidays when I could, but I kept my visits brief. I never really felt like I fit in with my family, and after a while, I just stopped trying to force a relationship with them. Fast forward a few years, and Ella gets engaged. I was surprised when she reached out to me and asked if I would be her maid of honor. At first, I thought she was joking. I hadn't been involved in her life for years, and we barely spoke anymore. The only times we did talk were when she needed something or when our parents were trying to force us together for family events. I didn't want to outright refuse her, but I had a lot of mixed feelings. I didn't feel close to her, and the idea of being in a bridal party with her felt like a slap in the face after all the years of being overshadowed. But I didn't want to be a jerk, so I told her I would think about it. A few weeks went by, and I started to think more about what being in her wedding would actually mean. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I was not emotionally ready to pretend like we had a good relationship. Our childhood had left me with scars that I wasn't sure I could just ignore for the sake of her wedding. The more I talked to some of my close friends about it, the more I realized that I had a right to protect my mental health and not put myself in a situation that would bring up all the old wounds. I eventually called her and told her that I didn't feel comfortable being her maid of honor. I said that while I loved her and cared about her, I couldn't ignore the years of resentment and hurt that I had accumulated. I told her that it was nothing personal, but I just didn't think I could pretend to be someone I wasn't for her big day. I also told her that I wasn't sure if I even wanted to be involved in the wedding at all. Ella was furious. She said that I was being dramatic and that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make things right. She accused me of being selfish and said that if I really cared about her, I would get over whatever happened in the past and be there for her. She even told me that I was ruining her happiness, and I was being ridiculous by letting a few childhood issues affect her wedding. I told her that I didn't think it was that simple and that I wasn't going to be guilt-tripped into doing something I wasn't ready for. She started crying and said that I was breaking her heart. Our conversation ended with her telling me to think about it some more, but I knew that she was upset and didn't understand my perspective. Now, I'm feeling guilty. My friends have told me that I'm not in the wrong and that I'm allowed to set boundaries, but I still feel conflicted. I know that this is her special day, but at the same time, I don't feel like I owe her anything after all the years of hurt. I haven't heard from her in days, and I'm wondering if I've made a huge mistake by refusing to help her with her wedding. AITA for not wanting to be involved in my sister's wedding because of our past. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she disrespected my parenting. I, 32M, have a younger sister, Liz, 29F, who I've always had a somewhat strained relationship with. We've never been close, and honestly, I've always felt like I've had to shoulder the majority of the emotional weight in our family. It's not that she's a bad person, but growing up, she was often the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, while I was the one who had to deal with the fallout of our parents' mistakes. I was the responsible one, and she could get away with pretty much anything. I've never really resented her for it. It's just how things were. Now, I'm married with 2 kids, Liam, 5, and Emma, 3. My wife, Jessica, 30, and I have a really solid partnership, and we've both put a lot of effort into building a stable, happy home for our kids. We're big on discipline and consistency when it comes to raising them, and it's worked well for us so far. My sister Liz, on the other hand, has no kids and has always been a bit more free-spirited. She likes to party, travel, and do what she wants when she wants. She's never had much interest in settling down or having children, and while I've never judged her for that, I also don't really understand her lifestyle. Last weekend, Liz came to visit. We had a family gathering, and things were going fine until the afternoon when she started interacting with my kids. I noticed she was letting Liam and Emma eat a ton of candy before dinner. something we've always discouraged. My wife and I have been pretty strict about their sugar intake because we don't want them to develop bad habits, and we've worked hard to make sure they understand the value of moderation. Liz, however, kept encouraging them to eat more candy, even after I asked her a few times to stop. I calmly told Liz, "Hey, we've talked about this before. We don't let the kids eat a lot of sugar before meals. Can we please make sure they're eating more balanced snacks?" She rolled her eyes and responded, "Oh, come on, they're just kids. You're overthinking it. A little sugar won't hurt them." I tried to stay calm, but she could tell I was getting irritated. "Liz, please," I said. "It's not about the sugar itself. It's about consistency. We've worked really hard to teach them boundaries, and this isn't helping." She seemed to dismiss me and continue to feed them candy. I felt like I was going to lose my cool, so I took Liam and Emma aside and tried to explain to them that they needed to stop eating the candy because it would spoil their appetite for dinner. Liz, not liking being called out, gave me this sarcastic laugh and said, "Oh, the food police have arrived." At that point, I was pretty fed up. I told her, "If you're not going to respect the boundaries I set for my kids, then maybe it's time for you to leave." She was taken aback and said, "What? Are you seriously kicking me out over candy?" I replied, "I'm not kicking you out. I'm just asking you to respect my rules while you're in my home. I would never do something like this if I were visiting your place. So please extend the same courtesy." Liz was furious. She accused me of being uptight and controlling and started throwing around words like overbearing and too strict. She said that I was acting like a helicopter parent and that my kids would grow up to be miserable because I was sheltering them from everything. The argument escalated quickly, and Jessica got involved to try and de-escalate the situation. Liz ended up leaving in a huff, and I haven't heard from her since. I feel like I might have overreacted, but at the same time, I don't think I did anything wrong. I'm not a perfect parent, but I do my best, and I don't think it's unreasonable to expect respect for the way we raise our children. So, AITA for kicking my sister out over candy? AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me after she asked to stay with me for a while. It turned into a huge family feud. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I have a stable job in marketing, own my apartment, and have been very careful about my finances. My younger sister, Emily, 27F, on the other hand, has always been a bit more free-spirited. She has had multiple short-term jobs over the years, has moved in and out of friends' apartments, and has had her fair share of financial struggles. I've helped her in the past, but I've always tried to set clear boundaries because I've learned the hard way that helping without limits can backfire. A few months ago, Emily went through a rough breakup and lost her apartment because she couldn't keep up with rent. She called me in a panic and asked if she could stay with me for a while until she figured things out. I explained that my apartment is small and that I work from home part of the time, so it wouldn't be ideal, but I did offer to help her find temporary housing like a short-term rental or sublet, and I offered some financial help to cover a deposit if needed. Emily seemed upset, but didn't press the issue at that moment. A week later, she called again, more desperate. She explained that she had no other options and that staying with me would be easier than trying to crash with friends or go to a shelter. I admitted I felt torn. On one hand, I empathized with her situation and wanted to help. On the other, I knew that living together would be stressful and probably unsustainable. After a few days of thinking, I told her the truth. I couldn't let her move in long term. I reiterated my offer to help her financially to get a place and to help search for options, but my apartment was just too small and I needed my own space to work and live comfortably. Emily didn't take this well. She accused me of being selfish and said I was turning my back on family. She even suggested that I could make it work if I really wanted to, implying that I was just being difficult. I explained that it's not a matter of whether I want to or not. It's about the practical realities of our living situation and the fact that I had my own commitments and responsibilities. She got increasingly emotional, saying that I always had been the golden child who had everything together and that I had no idea what it's like to struggle like she does. The situation escalated when I tried to involve our parents to mediate. I told them Emily needed support, but my apartment was not the right solution. Our parents ended up taking her side, saying I was being cold and not helping my sister. Emily started posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about me being a heartless sibling and how I refused to help when she needed me most. It turned into a huge family feud, with cousins and other relatives weighing in. Suddenly, I was portrayed as the villain in a story I didn't feel I was part of. Meanwhile, Emily ended up moving in temporarily with a friend, but she kept sending me messages asking if I'd reconsider. Each time I reminded her of my boundaries, she would get upset and accuse me of abandoning her. My parents keep bringing it up at family gatherings, subtly hinting that I should learn to be more compassionate, and family comes first. I've been trying to stay neutral, explaining that helping doesn't always mean cohabitation, but everyone seems to think I owe her my apartment. Some friends have told me that I was right to set boundaries and that cohabiting with a sibling in crisis can be very difficult, while others say I should have made sacrifices for family. I genuinely feel conflicted because I don't want to hurt my sister or be seen as uncaring, but at the same time, I know that forcing a living situation I'm uncomfortable with could damage both our relationship and my own mental health. I'm now dealing with ongoing tension with my family, and I feel like I've been painted as the villain for trying to do what I think is reasonable. Emily occasionally texts me asking if she can just stay for a couple of weeks, and I keep refusing gently but firmly. The guilt is starting to get to me, especially when my parents make comments about how I prioritize my comfort over family. I truly think I've tried to help in a practical way, but it seems like everyone interprets my refusal as a lack of care or love. I've tried explaining that helping her find her own space, providing financial assistance, and emotional support is still helping, but they see it as insufficient because it doesn't involve her living with me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister live with me, even though she asked for help during a rough time. I genuinely want to support her, but I also have to protect my own boundaries. I feel like I'm stuck between being a good sister and being forced into a situation that could harm both of us. AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids trick-or-treating after she forgot to pay me back for babysitting. So I, 29F, have a younger sister, Cara, 32F, who has 3 kids, 10M, 8F, and 6M. She's a single mom after divorcing her husband 2 years ago, and ever since then, I've been helping her a lot more than I probably should. I love my nieces and nephews, but Cara has a habit of assuming I'm always available and willing to drop everything to help her out. For context, I work full-time as a graphic designer, mostly from home, and I'm not exactly rolling in money. Cara works as a nurse with long hours, and she often asks me to watch her kids just for a few hours, which somehow turns into an entire day or night. At first, I didn't mind because I knew she was struggling. But over time, it became less of an occasional favor and more like I was her unpaid babysitter on call. A few months ago, I told her that I couldn't keep doing it for free. I explained that I don't have kids of my own, and spending my weekends or evenings babysitting all the time was eating into my personal time and side freelance work. Cara seemed understanding at first and agreed to start paying me $15 an hour when she needed me to watch the kids. For a while, it actually worked fine, until she started forgetting to pay me. About 3 weeks ago, she asked me to watch the kids from Friday evening until Saturday afternoon because she had to pick up an extra shift. I said sure, but reminded her of our agreement. She promised she'd pay me $180 for the time. The next day, she came to pick them up, thanked me, and said she'd send the money later that night. She never did. I texted her twice over the next week, and she kept saying she'd get it to me soon. Then Halloween weekend rolled around. I had plans to go to a small costume party with some friends, my first actual social event in weeks. 2 days before Halloween, Cara called me in a panic, saying she was scheduled to work on the evening of the 31st and didn't have anyone to take the kids trick-or-treating. She asked if I could do it just this once since it's Halloween and they'd be so sad to miss it. I told her I already had plans and that I still hadn't been paid for the last time I babysat. She immediately got defensive, saying, "You're seriously going to deny your own niece and nephews a Halloween because of money?" I said it wasn't about the money, it was about respect and boundaries. I told her if she paid me the $180 she owed me by the next day, I'd rearrange my plans and take the kids. She said she'd see what she could do. Spoiler, She didn't send me anything. On Halloween morning, she texted, "You're still coming, right? I'll pay you next week, I promise." I said no. She called me 3 times in a row, crying and saying I was heartless and selfish. I told her I was done being taken advantage of and that she needed to find another solution. Apparently, she ended up asking one of her coworkers last minute to take the kids along with their family. The next day, I got a barrage of texts from her calling me a cold, bitter woman who hates kids and that I ruined Halloween for her children. My mom called too, saying that while Kara should have paid me, I could have just been the bigger person for one night. I reminded her I've been the bigger person for 2 years straight. Since then, Kara has been completely cold toward me. She even told our family group chat that I abandoned her and that she can't trust me anymore. A couple of relatives think I went too far because family helps family, but a few others have told me privately that I did the right thing. Here's where it gets trickier. Kara's oldest, a 10-year-old nephew, called me a few days later. He said he missed me and asked why I didn't want to take them trick-or-treating. That broke my heart. I told him I love him and his siblings, but sometimes adults need to work out grown-up problems. He said, "Mom said you care more about money than us." That absolutely gutted me. Since then, I've been questioning whether I was too harsh. I know the kids are innocent in all this, and it kills me that they might think I don't care about them. But I also feel like Kara keeps manipulating situations so that I look like the bad guy when she's the one refusing to hold up her end of the deal. My friends think Kara is using guilt as a weapon, and one of them said I should send a clear message by refusing to babysit again until I get paid, every single time, up front. Another friend said I should just cut her off completely for a while, so she realizes I'm serious. The thing is, it's not just about Halloween or even the money anymore. It's about the pattern. Every time I set a boundary, Kara pushes it. She cries, guilts me, and our mom always steps in to pressure me to cave. When I finally stand firm, I'm heartless. It's exhausting. To be honest, I feel resentful now when I even see Kara's name pop up on my phone. I hate feeling that way about my own sister. But I also know that every time I've forgiven her just this once, she's taken it as permission to do it again. I keep replaying Halloween night in my head. I was at my friend's party, dressed up as a vampire, having a genuinely good time for once. But I couldn't shake the guilt. I kept thinking about my niece and nephews walking around with strangers instead of me. And yet, part of me also felt a weird sense of relief that I'd finally said no and stuck to it. I know money is tight for Kara, and I get that she's under a lot of pressure as a single mom. But I also have bills, rent, and my own life to manage. It's not my fault her ex isn't contributing enough or that childcare is expensive. And if I keep bailing her out every time, what incentive does she have to get her situation more stable? Now it's been over a week since Halloween, and we still haven't spoken. My mom keeps hinting that I should apologize for the sake of the family, but I honestly don't know what I'd be apologizing for. For expecting to be respected? For not letting my sister take advantage of me again? So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to take my sister's kids trick-or-treating after she didn't pay me for babysitting? Was I being selfish and punishing the kids for their mom's actions? Or was I finally setting a necessary boundary that's long overdue? AITA for calling off my wedding after finding out my fiancé lied about her past? Okay, so here's the situation. I, 30M, was set to marry my fiancée, Emma, 29F, after a whirlwind 2-year relationship. We met through mutual friends and we hit it off instantly. We've been through a lot together, and she's been nothing but amazing in my eyes until recently. Emma and I have always been open about our pasts. We had some pretty deep conversations about relationships, exes, and the mistakes we'd made in our previous lives before we met. She seemed to have a very wholesome background. Nothing too wild, no huge scandals. So when we got engaged, I thought I knew everything about her, and I really thought she was the one. Now, the part that's hard for me to talk about. About a month before the wedding, we were sitting on the couch one night, just casually talking about old times and life in general. I told her I was curious to know if there was anything from her past that I didn't know yet. You know, the kind of thing where maybe it's an embarrassing story or an ex she had that wasn't exactly the best situation. She got a little quiet, which I noticed, but didn't think much of it. Eventually, She told me that there was one thing she had never shared with me. She then proceeded to tell me that before we met, she had been involved with someone who was very prominent in the local community, a man who was well known for being successful, rich, and influential. She admitted they'd had an affair that lasted a few months, and while she wasn't proud of it, she said she was young and naive at the time. She also mentioned that she felt like it was a mistake and had kept it hidden out of shame. I was surprised, but not overly concerned. I didn't love hearing about her past affair, but I also understood that people can make mistakes when they're younger. We've all had our regrets. But then, the plot twist happened. The next week, I decided to do a little more digging because something didn't quite add up. I wasn't suspicious, but I've always been one to double-check facts, call a habit. I started asking around, and what I learned totally blew me away. Turns out, the man she had been involved with wasn't just some wealthy guy she was infatuated with. No, she was involved with a married man, who wasn't just any married man, but a man who was married to one of her close friends. I'll admit, this threw me for a loop. I had no idea Emma had kept this part of her past so hidden, especially from me. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided to confront her calmly about it. I asked her if there was any truth to what I'd heard. She denied it at first, but when I presented the details, she finally admitted that yes, she had been involved in an affair with a married man. And yes, it was with someone who was married to one of her best friends. Now, this is where things get even worse. Apparently, her friend, let's call her Rachel, didn't know about the affair. Emma had kept it a secret from Rachel for months, while still maintaining a close friendship with her. But it didn't end there. According to the people I talked to, Rachel had even been to Emma's house several times during the affair, and Emma would hang out with her while being in the midst of this illicit relationship. I was crushed, not just because of the affair, but because of the betrayal Emma had shown to her friend and ultimately to me. The whole thing felt like a web of lies, and it made me question everything I thought I knew about Emma. She had always presented herself as this morally upright, caring person who would never hurt anyone. But it felt like a huge betrayal of trust. I tried to keep my emotions in check when I confronted her about it, but I couldn't help it. I told her I needed some time to process everything. I needed to think. I told her that the wedding was still on, but I didn't know how to proceed given everything I had just learned. For the next few days, Emma begged me to understand. She said that she had made a huge mistake in her past, but that she was not the same person anymore. She claimed that she had no feelings for the guy anymore and that she had learned from her past mistakes. She also said that she hadn't told me about the affair because she didn't want to hurt me and that it was all in the past. But every time I thought about it, I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't stop thinking about how she had kept such a huge part of her life a secret from me and how she had lied to me about it. She had been keeping this from me for over a year, and now I was supposed to just get over it because she was a different person now. I talked to my family and friends about it, and they all had different opinions. Some said I should just forgive her and move on, that everyone makes mistakes, and she seemed genuinely remorseful. But others, especially my brother, said that I needed to take a serious step back. He pointed out that if she could lie to me about something as serious as an affair, what else was she hiding? How could I trust her with something as important as a marriage? I had a hard time reconciling these two perspectives. On one hand, I loved her. On the other hand, I felt like I couldn't move forward knowing she had been dishonest about something so big. After a lot of sleepless nights, I made the difficult decision to call off the wedding. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had been living in a relationship built on lies, and I didn't want to marry someone who had deceived me this way. When I told Emma, she was devastated. She cried and begged me to reconsider, but I told her I couldn't get past what she had done. She was upset, understandably, but also kept saying that she didn't deserve to be judged for something that happened in her past before she met me. Now, I'm second-guessing myself. I feel like I did the right thing, but I also wonder if I was too harsh. AITA for calling off the wedding over this? Could I have forgiven her? Or was this a deal breaker I couldn't ignore? AITA for not allowing my sister to attend my wedding after she gave my fiancé a traditional wedding gift that I found offensive? So here's the background. I, 28F, am getting married in a couple of months to my fiancé Mike, 30M. Mike and I have been together for 5 years, and while we've had some bumps along the way, like any relationship, everything has been smooth sailing for the last couple of years. We both come from somewhat traditional families, but in very different ways. My family is culturally traditional, and my sister Rachel, 32F, is the most traditional out of all of us. Rachel and I have always had a bit of a strained relationship. I love her, but she's always been kind of controlling and opinionated when it comes to my life. She always had an opinion on what I wore, who I dated, and pretty much every other decision I made growing up. As we got older, I learned to set boundaries with her, but she still crosses them sometimes. For example, when I got engaged, she made it very clear that she didn't approve of the way Mike proposed. I had a simple proposal on a beach, which she called too casual for a woman of my status. Anyway, when it came time for the wedding planning, I did my best to keep things as stress-free as possible and not let anyone interfere too much. But Rachel is very involved. She keeps suggesting that I make my wedding more traditional, and has been sending me links to extravagant venues and dresses that I absolutely cannot afford. I've had to remind her repeatedly that we're going for a simple, intimate ceremony, and that's not going to change just because she wants a huge spectacle. Fast forward to a couple of weeks ago, and Rachel showed up to my house with a gift for Mike and me. Now, this gift wasn't a typical wedding gift like pots, pans, or a blender. It was a piece of jewelry. Specifically, it was a gold necklace with a small pendant in the shape of a bull. I didn't know what to think at first, so I just kind of stared at it for a minute. Then Rachel started explaining the significance of the gift. She told me that in our culture, the bull symbolizes strength and masculinity, and that it was a traditional gift for a husband-to-be. Mike was confused, but politely accepted the gift. He didn't say anything, but I could tell he wasn't comfortable with it. I, on the other hand, was very uncomfortable. First of all, the necklace wasn't something that Mike would ever wear. He's more of a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy, and this pendant seemed kind of old-fashioned and out of place. But what really bothered me was the implication behind it. Rachel had made it clear, in a roundabout way, that Mike needed to be strong in a very specific traditional sense. I mean, who even wears gold necklaces with bull pendants anymore? It felt like she was trying to impose some sort of outdated idea of what a man should be onto him. I politely told Rachel that I didn't think the gift was appropriate and that we wouldn't be keeping it. She was clearly taken aback and asked why. I tried to explain that the gift just didn't fit with Mike's style or personality and that we were going for a more modern and simple vibe for our wedding. I also mentioned that we didn't really subscribe to the same ideas about masculinity and strength that she did, and that it just felt weird for her to try and impose her views on us in this way. Rachel didn't take it well. She started to get defensive, saying I was being disrespectful of our culture and that I was rejecting tradition just because Mike didn't fit into her narrow view of what a man should be. She said I was throwing away a meaningful gesture and that I was making it seem like I didn't care about my heritage. I told her that I appreciated her gesture, but that I wasn't going to let her dictate how we run our wedding or what we accept as gifts. She insisted I was being ungrateful and that I was alienating her from the whole process. At that point, I got fed up and told her that if she kept pushing this, she wouldn't be invited to the wedding. She was silent for a moment and then said something like, "Fine, if that's how you want to be, I won't waste my time trying to make this work." We left it at that for the time being, but since then, things have gotten more tense. Rachel has told our parents about the incident, and they're all on her side, saying that I should be more understanding of her intentions. My mom has even suggested that I should have just accepted the gift and saved the drama for another time, especially since Rachel was just trying to help me by giving us something meaningful. My dad thinks I overreacted too, but he's usually more neutral about these things. Now, it's gotten to the point where Rachel is saying she won't come to the wedding at all if the necklace isn't accepted or if we don't make things right. I don't want to give in, but at the same time, I don't want her to ruin the wedding either. I've been considering just telling her she's not welcome anymore because of how she's handling this, but I'm feeling guilty about the fallout that could happen with the rest of the family. So, AITA for not letting my sister attend my wedding because she gave Mike a gift that I found inappropriate. I feel like she's trying to control the situation, but I don't want to be the one to escalate things. What should I do? AITA for not letting my sister-in-law bring her dog to my wedding? So I, 30F, am getting married to my fiancé, Jake, 32M, in a few months. We've been together for 5 years, and we've been planning this wedding for almost a year now. It's been pretty stressful, but also really exciting, and we're really looking forward to it. Now, here's where the problem comes in. Jake's sister, Emily, 28F, has a dog, a medium-sized mixed breed, who she absolutely adores. She's a huge dog lover, and I get it. I really do. The dog is her baby, and she's incredibly attached to it. The issue is that she has mentioned multiple times now that she wants to bring the dog to the wedding. At first, I thought she was joking, but as we got closer to the wedding, she started being more serious about it, and I was getting really uncomfortable. I mean, this is a formal event with over 100 people attending. We're getting married at a venue that doesn't allow pets, and there are specific rules about what can and can't be brought in. I didn't want to be the bad guy, but I was really firm with her when I said that dogs weren't allowed. It's not even a matter of whether or not I like her dog. It's just not the place for it. Emily was not happy. She kept saying things like, "But my dog can't be away from me for that long," or "He's like family. I can't imagine being away from him on such a big day." She even tried suggesting that I get the venue to make an exception because it's my wedding day and I should want everyone to feel comfortable. She started talking about how much it would mean to her if the dog could come and how stressed she'd be without it. At this point, I felt like I was being reasonable, but she wasn't hearing me at all. I told her that we had already signed contracts with the venue, and it was just not an option. I offered alternatives, like having a family member or a friend dog sit for her during the ceremony and reception, but she was not interested. Emily argued that it wouldn't be the same and that she couldn't enjoy herself without her dog around. To be clear, she's not allergic to dogs, and she's in no way physically affected by being away from her dog for a few hours. A few days ago, I had a conversation with my mom about the whole thing, and she agreed with me. She told me that my wedding is supposed to be about the couple and not about other people's pets. I was feeling pretty confident that I was in the right, but then Jake stepped in and said that maybe I was being a little too harsh. He said that Emily has always been a little high-strung about her dog, and maybe I should try to be more understanding. He didn't want to start any drama with his sister right before the wedding, especially since they don't always get along, and he thought it might be easier to let her bring the dog for a few hours. I was frustrated because I felt like I was being pushed into a corner. I don't mind dogs in general, but the idea of having an animal running around during my ceremony and reception just seemed chaotic. We're having a formal event, and I didn't want the focus to be on her dog or have to worry about a dog causing issues. I also didn't want to start a precedent where every time Emily has an issue, it's just expected that I'll accommodate her. This is my wedding, and it's important to me that everything goes smoothly. The conversation escalated when Emily found out I had spoken to Jake about her dog situation. She called me up upset that I was talking behind her back and going behind her back to talk to my mom about it. She told me I was being unreasonable and that I was being rude to her, and now she's saying she doesn't even want to come to the wedding at all if she can't bring her dog. This put me in an incredibly awkward position because I don't want to cause her to feel excluded, but at the same time, I'm not budging on the dog issue. Now, I'm feeling conflicted. I know weddings can be stressful. I get that she loves her dog, but at the same time, I can't help feeling like she's trying to take over the event. I've been so excited for this day for a long time, and I don't want anyone, even family, to undermine my plans. The dog thing has become such a huge issue, and I'm starting to feel like Emily is trying to manipulate me into giving in. So, AITA for not letting my sister-in-law bring her dog to my wedding? Should I just let it go to avoid more drama? Or am I justified in drawing a line here? Thanks for reading, and any advice would be appreciated.